Yeah, this is probably one of the more unique presentations probably will be given today. So about me, I'm a South Carolina native, born and raised my entire life there. Done 10 plus years in IT, everything from help desk, Linux sysadmin, unfortunately Lotus Notes administration way back in the day, Windows Active Directory, Exchange, and then also Linux sysadmin stuff. Right now I'm currently doing network administration, mainly on Wi-Fi, and I've gotten my Red Hat Certified Systems Administrator under version 6 and Certified Systems Administrator under 5, 6, and 7. Again, I work for a company that does wireless networking for mostly student housing, and we got about 60,000 APs under management right now. About self. This is the Southeast Linux Fest. Please God, do not confuse it with the other self, known as the Southeast Leather Fest, which takes place typically on the same weekend as we do in Atlanta, and it makes for some wonderful Twitter hash collisions between us and the Leather Fest. Our self started in 2009 in Clemson, South Carolina, as an extension of our local Linux users group. It's like Upstate Carolina Linux Users Group is the name. And in 2019, we brought in about 800 attendees, which does make us on the larger side of the Linux Fest in the US. I started doing the networking for the event in 2014. Prior to that, it was a mostly volunteer group of the Slackware gentlemen would come together and do the networking the best that they could, but no one person was dedicated and took it on. And so in 2014, when I was with my employer at the time, I got them to sponsor me and the equipment to take over and do the event. We do 70 speaker sessions over 5 concurrent tracks, with 4 of the tracks being recorded and streamed live. And we do it all entirely automated. We have one person, primarily me, doing the managing the automation system, and then other than that, that's really all the volunteers that we need to do the system. The services that we offer, aka what needs to be automated. So there's some obvious ones on that list. So there is recording and live streaming the speaker sessions. That's actually how the automation platform got started. We were having issues with the slide or with the recordings being stopped and started at appropriate times, and the audio levels and the video levels being correct when they get recorded. And unfortunately, once they're wrong, there's no going back. So it was actually automating the video was the primary driver of the system. But once that got working fairly quickly, I decided to start adding additional services that we do for the event and the speakers. So we have a little box that's got some LEDs in it that will flash appropriately to tell the speaker how they're doing on the time. So they'll give a 5-minute warning when the presentation's almost up. And it will also tell them, communicate with them when the videos are starting and stopping. I did forget to add, if you have any questions, go ahead and interrupt me. I'd rather talk about them during than save them all up for the last. The next is we put cameras over, PoE style surveillance cameras over all the doors into the ballrooms. And using that, we count people coming in and out, and we can determine roughly how many people attended each session. So this can be, we can use this for future to determine whether the speaker drew in a good crowd, whether the topic drew in enough people, so we can help steer both the speaker and the content selection in the future based on popularity. The next is we have vote boxes. So if you've ever been to IKEA, and as they're leaving, they have a box right by the exit. It's like something to the effect of, how did we do? And there was a smiley face and a frowny face. And you hit it right as you leave, and that gives them an idea of how they did. So we're doing something similar. We got pictures of it, and those are, as people are leaving, how did you like the session? Was it great? Was it neutral, or did you hate it? And we don't ask, we don't have the interface to ask, was it the content? Was it the speaker? Did it smell? For whatever reason, how did you think of the presentation? We provide event-wide Wi-Fi that is open to everyone. We actually shut down the hotel's Wi-Fi system. And they actually help us with doing that. We have a good relationship with their maintenance staff, so that they don't interfere with our network. We do a LAN party. So in the LAN party, it is an excuse to get a bunch of people together and play games, whether it's Minecraft, Team Fortress 2, or something else. And all the games do run natively on Linux. The next is event-wide information displays. So if you notice in here, they have the monitors outside of each room that displays the information. We decided to hijack those and use those for our purpose in our hotel. And the next is monitoring. This would be your more standard network monitoring. The backbone of our automation is NodeRed. NodeRed, I discovered it via the Home Assistant project. NodeRed is, I believe it is based off of Node.js and JavaScript, but don't quote me. But also we use MySQL as a database backend and MQTT as the transport mechanism, so that the little hardware devices can speak to the automation system over a message protocol. One of the things I love about NodeRed is its drag and drop. You can define these nodes, and some of them could be a database query, some of them could be a switch, so it's an if statement. Some of them you can use to change variables. And I found this system very easy to pick up. I don't like programming. I don't have a background in programming. I'm not very good at it. So this is a way that I can build a system that is extremely powerful with very little in programming knowledge. And I'll show a little demo of NodeRed in a bit. Recording the sessions. So we use a small form factor desktop. Think about yay big. That will, it runs entirely headless on purpose. We did not want a display or a keyboard for someone in the room to mess with. And it either runs Gentoo or Ubuntu, depends on who gets the final say, whether it's me or another gentleman. And we use AnyDesk to access it remotely, or I also have a KVM over IP connection that I can plug in on the back of it. Since these are consumer grade desktops, they don't have an ILO or an IPAM or an iDrake or a lights out. All of our recording is done with OBS with a WebSocket extension installed, and this WebSocket extension is what allows us to do the automation for OBS. The only part of the automation that we care about is starting and stopping the recordings. Everything else is already predefined, and so that's the only thing we care about is start and stop. I couldn't figure out how to get NodeRed to do it, call this WebSocket API directly, so I had to write a little Python glue script using lots of examples that is bashed together into something that will actually function. OBS will then write out the video to an NFS share. Because the WebSocket at the time did not have an API to ask what file name you're currently writing out, we have to scrape it using LSOF, that basically lists open files, and I sort for the specific directory that OBS should be writing to. Then that file name is stored within the database so that we don't have to, so that we have the file name and the folder path that it's in for the rest of it. For the capture, we use Magwell USB 3 HDMI capture devices, PoE cameras capture the speaker, much like they're doing with a much more expensive camera, and then a USB audio DAC, which does give us balanced left and right audio. I have a particular disdain for Apple and their HDCP. We have found, because we're using splitters to come from the user's or the speaker's laptop to a splitter, and then from the HDMI capture and to the projector, some Apples and some configurations will block the signal to the Magwell device because it's trying to enforce the HDMI copy protection. So I have a disdain for Apple. Recording part 2. The sessions, after the session is over, NodeRed will then upload the video to YouTube, and then we also, new for 2022, will be sending it to Internet Archive, and if we can find a good instance, PeerTube too. And our goal is to get the session video up online as fast as possible after the session is over. We ran into a problem with the YouTube API. Based on how they do their API query limits and uploading videos, after about 5.5 videos, we get locked out for 24 hours. There does not appear to be any fix for that. We've requested extensions to up the limit, because we only upload videos for a weekend. After that, we don't upload videos again until the next year. But again, being YouTube, they have never gotten back. Live streaming. Live streaming is handled a little bit different. Again, it's OBS that does it, but we have partnered with Noah, who does the Ask Noah show, and iSpeed, and he manages the streaming servers. So what we do is, at the very beginning of the day, we set up OBS to stream to one of his servers, and then he takes it over from there. And we do embed the live stream on our website so that from our website you can see the live stream. And again, remember, we're doing 4 live streams at the same time and uploading videos when the sessions are over. Here are the speaker lights. One of our staff members has a laser cutter, so he cut out with balsa wood with the laser cutter and made these nice little boxes. It is a Node MCU ESP8266 Arduino board, specifically running the ESP Home project. ESP Home project is think of it as an operating system for the ESP devices, and it allows me to just define a configuration file, JSON configuration file, and give it to the ESP Home, and it will compile the code on a desktop and then upload it to the ESP device itself. Those connect over Wi-Fi, unfortunately, 2.4 gigahertz only. And again, it uses MQTT to listen, in this case, listen for messages of when to fire the different colors. So green is it's recording. Yellow is when the yellow starts flashing, that's a 5-minute warning, and red is stop. The video recording's been stopped. And we tell our presenters the recordings start and stop within 10 seconds of the scheduled times. So if you start early, it won't capture it. If you run late, it won't capture it. People counters. We're using, at the time I could not find any good open source options. You could probably do it now today with TensorFlow, but I actually found it's not terribly expensive. It's about 120 bucks, a perpetual license for some software called Camlinux. Basically it's camera analytics, but spelled funky. And by mounting the camera directly over the door, we count people regardless if they're stacked together. So if two people come in shoulder to shoulder, if you had a camera from the side or the front, you might miscount because the one person will be obstructing the other. So by putting it directly overhead, it's easier to count individual people as they're crossing the door. And the camera Linux software is aware of direction. So we put an arrow so we only count people as they enter the room. We don't count them as they leave, just to try to keep from double counting. And the camera Linux software has a JSON HTTP API that NodeRed will query and be able to then store how many people entered that room into the database. Next is the vote boxes. Our artwork used to be, as some people call it, a little more offensive as far as the frowny faces versus just thumbs up, thumbs down. And again, it's based off of Node MCU, MQTT, and Wi-Fi, and it's USB powered, exactly like the speaker lights. Again, same thing, running ESP home. It's just a different JSON configuration for it. And when the session is over, we'll have how many people attended that session and how many people voted and what the vote was. So in the database, it's real simple. An upvote is +1, a blue vote or neutral vote is 0, and a negative vote is -1. So at the end, we can tell exactly how many people voted and then what the vote was. So we can tell with a pretty good certainty without physically surveying people of how good that session was. And so that can then help us influence the topics and the speakers for future selection. Again, we do all of the Wi-Fi networking for the event. We use nothing of the infrastructure provided by the hotel. We run our own cable, Ethernet and fiber. We put it in the ceiling. We've actually been able to leave a lot of it in the ceiling year to year. Hotel may or may not know that's there. I don't advertise it's there, but if on the setup day, I'm going around with a ladder and popping ceiling tiles and dropping cable down. So if they pay attention, they'd figure it out. We bring in our own internet connection. Again, we don't use anything from the hotel. We run it. I own all the hardware and I manage it all. And all of the automation and everything else, all the services that we do, none of it's cloud-based. It's all hosted on-site. And I want to do that for reliability if in case there was an internet outage. We can only afford to get one internet connection. It's a gigabit. It's like 940 by 30 coax connection, and it still costs us $800 to get it, even though we only use it for 3 days. We do 6 servers, 20 plus APs, and 7 switches. Again, I own all that. Most of those servers are bare metal. There is some virtualization. When I said we run our own cable, it is quite literally we run our own cable. In 2019, we expanded into a new wing of the hotel, so I needed to extend our network into the new wing. In order to do that, there is about a 5-foot diameter pipe that runs between the 2 sections of the building underground, where they have things like steam cables, fiber, and communication cables. And so if you actually look, you can see our fiber right there at the very top, draped along everything. I did not go with armor. I paid $200 for the fiber. If in the run-up for 2022, I'll go up there and test the fiber. If it tests bad, I'll run new fiber. It's cheaper to get inexpensive fiber. It's about 800 feet worth than it is to buy more premium fiber that might sustain a little more damage. And the other picture is the NOC. where we set up all the cables come back to the NOC, and we have all the servers. It does get quite warm. We have trip breakers. I'm trying to get better about not tripping breakers because it's a real pain when that happens. If you look, you can see the cables coming down from the ceiling. So we don't have any cables that are laying on the floor on any walkway. All of them go up into the ceiling. LAN party. So we host on-site servers for Team Fortress 2, Minecraft, and Unreal Tournaments 2004. What's nice about Team Fortress 2 is it does have a native Linux edition, and it's free to play. All you need is a Steam account, and you can download and install it. We set up, 2019 we did about 30 or so positions, and it filled up in the evenings. And in each position we provide power and a hard Ethernet jack for anyone who brings anything that needs to be wired in. We do gigabit all the way, and 10 gig between switches and the backbone, and all the servers are in 10 gig too. Displays. This is how we used to do it, and I hated this system. It became out of date. It looks janky and cheesy. Basically, we'd print out the information and tape it to the wall. And so right next to it is a wonderful display that the hotel has conveniently placed there for us, for their use. So what it really is a VGA display and an HDMI display, depending on exactly how old the display is. And behind it is some embedded computer running some of their system. So what we have now is we have 25 Raspberry Pi wireless zeros that we're going to be hooking up behind the display. So we're gonna take apart their display, unhook their display from their computer, plug it into ours, and be able to manage those displays. And those displays are running Ubuntu with Firefox and kiosk mode, and they just refresh over and over a URL on the server, and NodeRed writes out the file for the HTML. It's just straight HTML, a little bit of PHP and CSS, and again, those are all Wi-Fi based. Monitoring, bulk of the network monitoring is LibreMMS, which is a pretty cool SNMP based platform. The next is for LAN cache. So we run an on-site cache for most game platforms. So when you download a popular title, it's probably actually being downloaded from our cache, which we have 10 gig interfaces on. The screenshot you see is it's an EKL stack that produced that, and it can even show down to the game title in Steam which title has been downloaded the most and which IPs downloaded when which service has been downloaded. Then we use mtop-mg, which is historically a NetFlow analyzer, but we use it. I use it to try to gain a sense as to where is the bulk of the traffic going. Is it going YouTube? Is it going Facebook? Is it Google? Is it Amazon? Is it Cloudflare? It does not see the NAT side, so it doesn't see the private side. It only looks at from the public side of the firewall. And we do run full IPv6 dual stack. So everything is dual stacked. And then we also get the statistics from the wireless controller, whether it's Unify or Ruckus. Historically, it's been Unify, but I now have a wonderful employer that has a lot of Ruckus APs that I will probably be borrowing, and then we can do Wi-Fi 6 because the APs I own, the Unify ones, are AC only, and I'd like to gain AX. More details. I've been slowly writing it up on my personal website along with the GitHub link. It has a lot more pictures and a lot more details of everything. This was more of an overview. Questions?
How many days does it take to set up and tear down?
So teardown is easy, about 2 hours. It is fascinating how fast it is to take everything down. Setup actually on site, we start on about a Wednesday afternoon, and we take Wednesday afternoon, all day Thursday, and we're ready for 8 a.m. on Friday. And it's me and one other gentleman that does it.
Thank you.
We have an online question from Chris Baker. New question. Zach, you say it is all automated and you're the only volunteer worker, but it must take a small army to do all this setups in power and tear down. Yes?
The setup is, again, really only me and another gentleman. I do all the configuration of the equipment at home. Typically how the planning works for the automation and the networking, I do it kind of hand in hand, is I will start it in January. With the event being in June, I'll start in January, start the planning and deciding exactly what I want to do. And then about March, I'll actually start testing, and because I'm reusing the automation over and over. So it's just building upon last year's event, which we didn't hold it in 20 or 21, unfortunately, on site at least. And so about March, I start pulling the pieces together, and typically by the end of April, I have the system fully working, and at least the bugs that I realistically think we would hit have been squashed and fixed, and workarounds dealt with. I don't try to do every corner case. It's just, it's only me.
You said you use LAN cache to cache Steam games.
Yep.
So that they could be downloaded from the local network rather than going out to the internet. I didn't think that that was possible anymore. I'd done stuff like that in the past because all that stuff is served over TLS encrypted.
Not quite. So specifically with the big game platforms, so Steam, Origin, GOG, which is Good Old Games, Riot, Wargaming, even the Warcraft people, none of them encrypt their game downloads. They
Really?
don't need to. What they will encrypt is they will establish a TLS connection, which they will get an encryption key and a hash of all the files. When the client finishes downloading the files over HTTP, it'll then hash it, and if the hash fails, it will then switch over to an HTTPS connection, bypassing the cache and going directly to the origin. And Steam actually does officially support it. There's a special host name called LAN cache. It's lancache.yourdomain, your fully qualified domain name, that if the Steam client finds, if that resolves to an RFC 1918 IP, then it will automatically download from that. So we don't even have to intercept. We don't have to do any DNS.
Oh wow! So that's not even a proxy. It's literally just.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's
I had no idea.
an officially sanctioned procedure with Steam. The other clients, we do have to intercept their DNS and redirect it to us so that we can rewrite it.
Is there anything other than game services you guys do that with?
Yes, we've successfully done it with Linux repos, so CentOS, Ubuntu, all of those download over HTTP. We have done it.
So they just expect you to download the MD5.
Yeah.
Which we all definitely do.
Yeah, exactly. It also works with Apple, so iOS and macOS updates also cache, and Windows updates also get cached.
Apps?
Yep, apps too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay.
The LAN cache in 2019 saved us about 1 terabyte of bandwidth that it served that we didn't have to download.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
I do want to show you NodeRed. So this is NodeRed. If you can actually go full screen on the screen share. It's, again, I find it really easy. I do my SQL statement, which then goes to a SQL node, and out of it, I'm just checking to see if there's a payload. If it's a null result, it won't even go on to the next procedure. This particular flow right here is if the database thinks NodeRed, or if the database thinks OBS should be running for that particular room, every 3 minutes it is going to check and reach out to the API, not API, it's the WebSockets, the OBS WebSocket, to see if the status is still recording. If the status has failed, but the database thinks it should be still running, it will then fire off a note to Telegram, which all the staff members use, and we have a specific Telegram channel that staff members can join that will get the failed messages. And I just have a little example right here where I'm injecting something into this var, which will send it to Telegram. And you can see the Telegram message came in here that the ballroom A's recording has failed. So that is a push notification to everyone in the group. And I can just add people into the group, and they can also get the notification. So it's a great way for us to go, oh crap, OBS has crashed, OBS is not running for whatever reason. Go into the room and try to troubleshoot it and save as much of the recording as we can. I thought I had a picture of it, but I guess it didn't. I live about an hour and a half away from the venue, and all of the networking equipment, it takes, I fill up a Suburban and a 20-foot trailer. There's that much. Particularly if I have the frames for the, where was it? The wooden frames, I build them on site, and like in 2019, I took my chop saw and a pile of lumber, 2x4s, and built it. We weren't sure whether the system would work, so I didn't want to invest in fancy truss systems that are like $500-600 a door, and we're doing 4 of them. So about $20 in lumber is a lot cheaper. These Husky rolling totes, I've got 4 of them now that get filled with cables. Again, we got 7,000 feet of cabling. The vast majority of that cabling is in bundles. So it's anywhere from 2 to 8 individual Ethernets are bundled together and will basically act as a trunk line so that we can just drop it down and run it across the wall of a ballroom, and instead of having to run individuals. But that takes a lot of volume to haul that much cable. What was that? And actually, I have, you don't see it in the picture, but on the right-hand side, there's another table with another 4 monitors. And again, the system is entirely ran by one person. We do have, in each ballroom, we have one, we call them room moderators, but basically they are the point of reference for the speaker. We try not to get them to mess with the audio because skill sets are different and sometimes it's more damaged than good. So we get them mostly to act as a liaison for the staff to the speakers. Question?
Somebody else have a question, I think. Is that right? This young man here? Oh. Did you have a question?
No. It was a stupid one, but I was going to ask, Counter-Strike 1.6? Question mark.
We host a server for Counter-Strike. I don't play it, so I don't know anything about it, but it's there. We host about six or eight, I can't remember exactly how many, on-site servers.
Yeah, because I noticed it runs pretty well, like most systems. So I thought pretty cool. Also, Quake 2.
What was that?
Also, I was wondering about Quake 2, if that's a possibility.
I mean, if there's a dedicated server that I can run on site, I'm not opposed to hosting it. I have plenty of hardware to host it.
Nice.
What you see up here now is actually our cable documentation. So this is the level of planning that I go into. So these cable bundles, let me see if I can zoom. Here we go. So I have how long they are. Each cable has a unique identifier, and then each strand within that identifier also is labeled A, B, C, D, E, F, G, depending on how many runs are in it. So in here in the, I haven't filled it out yet, never mind. But I'll basically put down what each cable is ahead of time. So you can see how many runs they are, how long they are, and we have how many labeled cables? Yeah, there's 66 different labeled cables that we keep track of, and this is typically anything over 20 feet. If it's less than 20 feet, I don't care. It just goes in a big box. Is that all the questions?
I think so.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it very much.